Hey everybody, and welcome to beautiful Edgewood Pool. This particular video is going to be all about pump filter basket changes, cleaning it out, and then I'm also going to double that, get the double the bang for your buck, because I'm going to also show you how to backwash the pump. Honestly, both of these things could be done, as standalones. I've chosen to put them both together in this very first video. That's Tatey. Say hi, Tatey. Oh, you can't see her. There's Tatey. Woohoo! And so what we're going to do is I'm going to, in each one of these videos, kind of explain how often to do it. I'll explain the kind of why behind it, and the most important part is the actual act of doing it. The first thing is that both of these jobs, both the pump filter basket change and also the backwashing the pump, should really be done at a minimum of daily. Most of the time, the facilities crew that comes in here, the facilities volunteers that come in here, do this process in the evening. Honestly, if the pool is really, really crowded, it'd be a really great idea to do this more than once. Like come in the afternoon around 2 or 3 after it's been hopping for a little while, especially on particularly warm days. And so let's go see what this looks like. Hello everybody again. Obviously we're inside the pool room at this point. I should mention that I had to turn off the pump just so that the audio would be a little bit better. Some parts of this video might be a little hard to hear me with the pump operating, but obviously we can do it without actually taking the steps. So this particular video is going to be one where I just show you a couple of the most important gauges and also the actual components that we'll be working on today. So there's the filter basket over on the left there. That's the thing with the clear top. And that contains a basket that we'll see in a second that has a little bit of debris in there that we'll clean out. So that's one step we'll be doing today. The other step is going to involve backwashing the filter. This is our sand filter, and hopefully I'll include a little diagram so you can kind of see what the inside of this thing looks like and approximately what it's doing. So here's the interior of the sand filter system. This is pretty similar to ours, but what happens is that there's a certain flow of water, which we'll see here, going through those little blue particles which represent the sand. And in so doing, you filter out all the little nasty stuff that's in there and send that clean water back to the system. But just kind of from a bird's eye view, is the various valves over here, which we'll talk about in just a second. The flow of water comes from these pipes, goes into the filter basket, hopefully filters out most of the nastiness, goes to the pump. That's the pump, the impeller pump. And that pump's whole entire point of existence is to pressurize water that flows through this pipe, up into this pipe, and then into the inlet of the pump. One of the things that you'll notice is back behind here, which because this thing is shut off, has no pressure right now, is what's called the inlet flow. And so this gauge will typically, if it's operating well, be typically between 19 and 20 psi. So we'll look for that when I turn the sucker on. This dial up top here is what we're going to be using to backwash the pump. One thing that I'll definitely say about this, you never want to screw around with this dial without having the entire system off. If you follow the outflow pipe, which is right here, you'll notice that it'll take us to another valve. That particular valve's job is to measure the outlet flow, right? So we have an inlet flow valve and an outlet flow valve. And this guy, when it's operating well, is going to be right around 15 or 16. I would say anytime this drops to 13, 12, probably is telling you that it's in need of some sort of backwash, which we'll see in a second. Another thing which can happen is if you drop to a certain flow, let's say 8, the autochlorinator doesn't work very well, and you might even get an alarm, which, by the way, might be able to hear that beeping, which is the alarm for low flow occurring behind me. Okay. So what are we going to do? Well, very first job is to come over here to these valves. And this valve is what's called the skimmer valve. It's even labeled skimmer valve. So the skimmers are those little compartments kind of out towards the left side of the pool that you probably saw on the far side of my introduction. And this particular open position is telling us that water is coming through the skimmers, at least if the pump was on, and then into the filter basket. This will become important when we see how to do the vacuum, right? So that's the vacuum valve. You'll notice that it's closed now, which should make sense because we're not vacuuming. And then probably one of the most important valves in this entire place is this one. This is called the main return valve. And you'll notice that it's kind of partially closed. If you care about the reasons for that, it's kind of partially closed because if it was all the way open, it wouldn't actually create any kind of suction on the skimmers. If you're interested in the physical chemistry behind that, just ask me. They're certainly not necessary for this video. But you'll notice that it's a little bit open. Full open position is like this. And then closed is like that. So just about all of the colored valves in this place, if it's perpendicular to the way the pipe is running, that is closed. Fully inline is fully open. So what are we going to do to finally go about cleaning this basket? Well, first of all, the power is off, right? And the power switch is right over here. Down is off. And another way that you can confirm that is obviously where we have no flow. First thing we're going to do to clean this basket is we're going to shut all these valves. Keep in mind the power is off. It is absolutely imperative that the power is off when you shut these valves. Otherwise, the pump will run dry and bad mama jamba is going to happen. What we need to do is to open this thing up. And when we open it up, we'll notice a couple of things. First of all, there is an O-ring. This O-ring is very important. Do not lose this O-ring. And another thing that we'll notice is that there's this little removable basket that has a little hole that goes towards the inflow pipe, right? And so you'll notice that a little bit has ended up in the bottom here. So that's what we're going to go ahead and clean out. You can come over to a well-placed garbage, dump it out, and if you feel uncomfortable about touching other people's hair, then we can grab a glove, but basically you just kind of run your either gloved hand or ungloved hand through the basket and to remove any hair that might be in there or other exciting things which we won't mention. So one of the things you'll notice, because I closed those valves, this water is not really running out, right? Which is good, because now I'm going to be able to restart the pump fairly simply following the procedure you'll see in a second. The problem is that many times when you do this removal of the basket, the water doesn't stay in there nicely. So what would typically happen is that you'll notice that I just opened that valve, which I'm not really supposed to do, and immediately you saw water start to run out of the basket. It'll get even worse if I open the skimmer valve over here. And so because this has happened, you may have to actually prime the pump, which I'll show you how to do right now, actually. Okay, so let's say that I closed all the valves. I turned off the machine, of course. I closed all the valves, and then a little bit of water ran out of this thing. If you were to reassemble it right now correctly and turn on the pump, it may or may not need priming. In other words, it may just run the pump dry. So what we need to do is the following. Okay, well at this point, you just saw me clean out the basket. So this is all nice and clean now. I'm gonna place this back into the kind of the pump container here. And you'll notice that I made sure that that open part was facing away from the filter basket, right? Another thing which I'm gonna make sure to do before I start to prime this pump is to take this O-ring and place it gently and nice and clean around the perimeter of the pump basket. I'll take this handy dandy hose and I am going to fill this entire basket all the way to the top until it starts splashing on my feet. And fairly quickly, you'd like to come over here and put the cover back on. Ideally, if I did this fast enough, there's enough water that's going to be kind of trapped in there that when I go ahead and open the main return, here's the main return, all the way, and turn on the power switch, I should see water as I kind of stare down here. I should see water start to kind of pump out of this pipe into the basket. If I don't see that, I need to go ahead and prime once again. And it should get to the point where you start to see a lot of cavitation, a lot of bubbles. And if all is good, eventually this will clear. And at this point, we can go back to our valves. The very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to find the skimmer valve, which is right here, and we're going to completely open the skimmer valve. And then we're going to come back and adjust the main return here, and we're going to return it back to about that 45-degree angle. And what we're looking for is to make sure that the pump stays nice and free of bubbles. If there's a little bit of air in your skimmer line, you may, after you do this particular step, notice a little bit of cavitation. But the good news is I've got a nice clear pump, and when I look at the pressure, it's reestablished itself at about 15 or 16. So at that point, you're done with the filter basket. Everything is set for normal operation. We're going to take it one step further, and we're actually going to at least go through the steps of doing a backwash on this filter. Okay, so let's pretend I just came into the pool and all the valves looked as they should. This was nice and free from any kind of cavitation. And I looked here, and instead of seeing what I see now, which is 15 or 16, let's say I saw a 12, right? What would I do? Well, we are going to backwash the pump. So anytime you do anything with valves or with the filter, you're going to want to make sure that you shut off the power. When you shut off the power, obviously we no longer have any flow. And the very first step that we're going to take is we're going to walk over here and carefully press down on this and rotate it around to, I guess that would be 6 o'clock if I was standing and looking at the pump like I should be, but you'll notice that it says backwash. At that point, you come back over to the power, you turn on the power, and what's happening here is that we're obviously reversing the flow through the pump. So now what's happening is that we're pushing flow out the backside of the pump and down and through down to the sewer. And so what you should do is do it for long enough that this white color kind of clears. Okay, let's pretend that's totally clear just so I don't get my electronics all wet. At that point, you're going to shut down the pump. You're going to rotate this around to rinse. Very similar to what you did before. It's just that now this says rinse. You turn on the pump and you wait for that thing to completely clear. Once it's looking fairly clear, once again, you shut off the power, you return it to normal operation, the position that says filter. And when we turn the power on, if you can still hear me, and wait for a little while, we will hopefully see that the flow has reestablished itself. Congratulations, you've just done your pump backwash and filter basket cleaning.